This time on Holy Ghost Notes.
So we'll have 37 chickens or something.
You're my hero, my idol, and I worship you.
How did that happen?
What is going on?
I'll perk you right up, brother.
Perk you right up.
What's up, friends and family? All of the above. This is the Holy Ghost Notes podcast. You're listening to Matt and Tim. That was a little backwards, but you get the point. Thank you all for listening in, for tuning in today. We've got a special one for you. But before we talk about that, Matt, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing very well.
Yeah.
What's new? I've been doing rehearsals every day. I'm getting ready to go on tour. When this episode is out and you're listening to it, which, by the way, thank you so much for listening to Holy Ghost Notes. I will be on tour, actually. So we're going to start September 9th in Philadelphia and make our way across the country. I'm really looking forward to being up on stage again. I was rehearsing this morning, and I was just thinking, I've been practicing for so many weeks on end without anybody else in the room. It's just me, not even the band.
Mm-hmm.
The experience playing in your studio is so different than playing live. You don't have the same adrenaline. You don't have all of the obviously all the other guys on stage and, obviously the crowd. And it's been 18 months since we've had any of that. So I'm really excited to get out there and do what I love doing again, mainly because I just miss our fans. I miss the environment. I miss the excitement. I miss the adrenaline. And as much as I practice by myself, and it's rewarding because I feel myself getting better, making progress, getting everything dialed in more and more and more, that in and of itself is really affirming. But if I were only ever to practice in a room by myself, I think eventually it would just burn me out and there wouldn't ever be that payoff. So I'm excited for that day where there's I reap the rewards of all of this hard work and practice, and we get back to doing what we're practicing for. What is the reason behind all of this?
Right.
So it's been a really good experience, I would say, having this much time to practice and dial everything in. It will be a really good feeling to be on tour with all the guys, and play these shows and make our way across the country and get back to it. Just get back in the driver's seat.
Yeah, for sure. So I have a question for you. Being that tour was your life, I mean, you guys are road warriors, if I've ever seen, to the truest extent of that word, road warrior. How was it not doing that after doing it for so long? Did you feel like you were, at any point, did you feel like you were lost or you didn't know what was going on? Or was it just I'm home, so I'm in home mode, and home means farming and practicing drums on my own? What was that experience like for you now that we're coming out of it?
I think I'm fortunate to have so much going on besides drumming. Mm-hmm. I felt fortunate the whole time. I was able to stay active, and I didn't have a whole lot of time on my hands to sit around and think about what I was missing out on by not touring. Mm-hmm. I think what I did struggle with from time to time was if my identity is rooted in me touring and me being the drummer for August Burns Red, then that identity is going to be compromised and affected by the fact that I'm not living that out. I'm not able to go on tour. And so it made me question, how is it that I see myself? How is it that I see myself when I'm just an everyday working 9 to 5, working on the farm, hanging out with my friends, and there's not this element of being on tour and having that applause and having the satisfaction of playing a really good show. It was an important time for me, actually, to step outside of the bubble that I've been in. I would call it a bubble for the last 15, 16 years. There's something psychologically that happens to you as a musician. If you see someone who's a teenage superstar, and you see that their life is it goes from this state of bliss to this state of turmoil. I think we need to have more empathy for those kids, because they're just kids and no one can handle fame at that age. It's hard enough to handle fame as a celebrity in Hollywood when you're an adult, but just imagine being a kid and not having the tools needed as you're just growing up and figuring things out.
Yeah, man.
And even though, I wouldn't consider what we're doing anywhere near that level of stardom, it's some level. It's some level of popularity, and it's hard to figure out, like, how much do I see myself in light of what I do? Instead of as a Christian, what we're told is, regardless of our best achievements or our lowest lows, we are always falling short of perfection, and therefore our need for Jesus is always at a high. And in him we can find our foundation. In him we can find our hope. In him we can find true love. And my job definitely distorts that a little bit, because there's so much affirmation coming at any given time. It makes you feel so good. I think that God taught me a lot over the last year about that, and I'm really thankful for that.
Yeah. So you're coming in stronger. So what's something that we can expect or should expect or be excited about with this upcoming tour?
Boy, I think there's going to be it's not going to be a big switch from the same old, play every show to the best of our ability and have a great time doing it. You're gonna see JB's flip flops, I'm sure. Yeah. You're gonna see Jake's dance moves. We're obviously celebrating Leveler being 10 years old, so we're going to play that album start to finish. And Tim, I know you and I kind of bonded over that record a little bit. So
it's true. Yeah.
That'll be cool. I think it's important for us to do these album anniversaries, because it brings our fans into this celebration in a way where it's like, we've been doing this a long time, and we're going to acknowledge the fact that this is the album that you loved from us, instead of just like pummeling people with the same new stuff that, like, oh, it's cool, I like it, I don't hate it, but there's a nostalgic factor to the old stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. It also makes you feel really old.
Yes, it does.
Like, a couple of my albums have been celebrating like the 20-year anniversary, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what is going on?
Right? 20 years old.
Just imagine 10 years from now, like Leveler 20-year anniversary.
20 years, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have to slow down some of these tempos, I think, a little bit.
I think so, yeah.
I'll be 45 in 10 years. I mean, double bass
crazy, man.
Isn't getting
That's
any
crazy.
easier.
Yeah.
It isn't getting, although I will say I've made progress. I've gotten faster over COVID.
Yeah?
I've gotten better at drums over COVID. And that feels really good. I was going to say this on the recording with our guest today, but the thing that I walked away from this podcast with was consistency over time. Because what I saw in Seamus was this idea of chapters, and he lived this chapter with Drumeo, and he's grateful he had that time. And now he's in the next chapter, and the next chapter doesn't negate how great the chapter before it was.
Right.
But it also means that this chapter, though it might feel different and at times have lower lows, is still important, and it matters just as much as the one prior to it. The consistency aspect is he's always been the same kind of person as long as I've known him, regardless of where he is or what he's doing. Like on this episode today, you as a listener are going to hear someone who really doesn't vary too much in who they are. He's very authentic. He's very true to who he is. His laugh, his tone, the way that he talks, what he says, what he doesn't say. And I love that about him. I think having someone like him in this show is so refreshing.
Yeah. It's been a long time coming. Seamus and I have been talking back and forth, I don't know, probably for a year now at this point.
Right.
Maybe even more than a year. So we've been planning on having him on for a long time, and I'm glad we finally got it to happen. But for those of you who don't recognize the name, Seamus Evely, I think I'm going to go with that. Might be Evely. I think it's Evely. But he is, or was, I should say, the host of a podcast called Drumeo Gab, which was like kind of a subsidiary of Drumeo. And he killed that podcast. Like that was... It was awesome. So there's still like 260 episodes out there for you guys to listen to if you're interested in going back and hearing a little bit about Seamus. But he has a new podcast now that definitely you want to check out. He's going to talk a little bit about it in our interview, but it's called Shootin the Shit with Seamus. And I already subscribed. I can't wait to listen to it. I actually just found out today that he wasn't doing Drumeo Gab anymore, so that came as a surprise. But needless to say, this was such a fun conversation, and it was exactly that. Like, we had no questions prepared ahead of time. This was just, we got on and we started talking, and I'm sure that will shine through. So without further ado, please enjoy our conversation with Seamus.
Really great to see
Likewise.
you guys, and thanks again for having me on your show. And I really like your guys' show. I think you guys do a really great job of what you guys do, and I like the spin that you guys have on it with Faith. I think that's really cool, and it kind of separates you from the rest of the crowd. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to start off. Let's just consider this our intro. Welcome to Holy Ghost Notes, dude. Thank you so much for hopping on here with us. When I was on your podcast, all podcasts seem to run together for me, or most interviews. That's a little bit of hyperbole in there, but yours definitely stood out to me as something that I remembered being on. And I was thinking about while I was rehearsing this morning, I think the thing I took away with it, or from it, was that it was just so fun.
Yeah,
Honestly, I just had a great time talking to you, almost like you've been a buddy of mine for a long time, and we've been catching up after, I don't know, maybe I just got back from tour, and it's like, so how's it been, man? And I'm like, at one point in the interview, I think I'm like, are we recording right now? Are we on? Is this thing like, have we started yet? Because this feels so informal and fun, and I really like that. And Tim and we try to create that same environment around here, talking about pretty heavy topics, obviously, and then drumming. It's nice to keep it light and keep it fun. So I really appreciate the job that you did with Drumeo podcasts, and just having me on there. And of course, that's how we met in the first place.
Yeah.
Well, I have to echo those sentiments, because I think that I did 261 episodes, interviews, and
Wow.
and I got to say, like, there's probably about 20 or 30 conversations I had that really, really stood out to me, because maybe it has a lot to do with the subject matter and how we connected on that. But man, you're in that top 20, 30 episodes I ever did. I felt like
I made the cut.
Yeah.
You made the cut, dude. You made the cut, baby.
I made the cut. Dude, everything I've ever done with my band, the Grammy nominations, it all falls short of this. This feels good. Dude, how many views? Okay, so I was in the top 20, but how many listens do you think I got? Maybe 25, 30, 35 total?
No,
you think I was in that
got
100 range?
No, I mean, you're probably hitting close to 3,000 on that one.
That's pretty good, man.
Tim.
Yeah, I know,
You're
right?
famous, dude.
Well, I don't know. Famous Seamus, right?
Famous.
That's what they tell me.
Seamus.
Yeah, no, that was a great episode. And the informal thing. Okay, so here's the thing, right? When you make it, okay, like say you have a little bit of pre-chat and then you're in, but you make it like an introduction, and it's like, look at all the accolades and look at all these things this person's done. And slowly but surely, you're just raising the elevator up until they click. All right, I'm done, doing all that. Now, how's that person feel? Like, because some people love that. They like to be buttered up.
Yeah.
But I have found, anyways, with drummers, and suppose you guys could probably relate to this and chime in on it too, that it's not really about that. It's like, I don't really want people making a lot of stink about me, and like, how about we just get into it? And so I always found that what that did was it made things shaky right off the bat, because I used to do that. I used to write scripts and do all this digging around just to butter them up before I throw them in the pan. You know what I mean? And It just made things shaky. And then I had to spend the next 10 minutes stabilizing things and making it comfortable for them. Whereas I found if we're in it and they would say, hey, are we recording? I'm like, yeah, of course. Then there was none of that upset.
I think this is 100% correct. I think that this goes along with the whole idea of like filming myself playing drums on my iPhone versus filming this high production value video and putting it on my Instagram. And the one with just my iPhone gets more views than the one that I've spent all this time and money producing. I think people, when they listen to a podcast, they want to know it's just you're in the trenches with them. There's not a lot of editing that has happened. There's not a lot of grandstanding that has happened. And admittedly, Tim, would you agree we sucked at this at first? Like we grandstanded the hell out of our guests. Like it was like Aaron Spears and it's like, okay, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do it. Tim, don't butter him up. And it's like, Aaron Spears, you're my hero, my idol, and I worship you. Thank you for coming on our podcast. I just did that again.
It kind of just came out. I think in some cases, admittedly, you had to at least make mention of, how they've influenced you. Like that's a lot, like where a lot of our conversation was stemming from. It's like, listen, man, like you have made an impact on our listeners and on me personally. And that's why I'm asking this question, So it's like, that was tough to navigate at first, but I think we've gotten better over the years. And for me as a podcast listener, like when I'm going, if I see the name of someone that I look up to that I want to hear or see, I want to hear the things that I'm not going to hear in a normal interview if I look it up on YouTube. I want to hear like them just being themselves and hear a story about, like, we had Ash Sohn on and he was talking about his pet pig, like instead of like how he set up his studio or what mics he uses, like that's the conversation that I'm usually looking for. And so I think we've kind of taken it back to let's just talk. Let's just have a conversation, Yeah.
Well, I think of it this way. It's almost like you got to drill in first, drill in deep in the way that you think you do. And then once you get there, then you start to pull back. And then it's like, oh, this is all it needed to be this whole time. But in your mind, you have questions. You're not certain. So you sort of maybe over-embellish certain things or overdo it in some way. And I did the same thing for a long, long time. I mean, I didn't do any podcast with video for maybe 35 episodes. And I used to imagine what they looked like in the room they were in, maybe their facial expressions, and trying to sense these body languages that way, which is kind of interesting. I felt it was a good way to start, actually, because it trains you to give more space, because generally I'm reading people's faces when I'm assuming either they're tired of me talking or they want me to continue on, or when they finish the thought or whatever. Not right. And then you can sort of time things that way, or like even quiet acknowledgments where you're nodding your head. Okay, I see they agree with what I'm talking about, or they like what I'm talking about. I can continue with that. But to interpret that
you are a
silently,
professional, dude. This
it's all in the details,
this is
man.
like all point on. Yeah,
it's all in those fine details. But
yeah, it's very true. So that's. Can you walk us through what you've been up to? I know there's been a lot of change in your life as it pertains to your employment or your collaborating with, Drumeo, and obviously you were successful, at least from a bird's eye view, at what you were doing there, right? You were having all these prominent, artists on there, and my experience with you, like I said, was just great. So I'm just wondering, what was your transition like from there into what you're doing now, and Are you more fulfilled doing what you're doing now than what you were doing then? And if so, what's the reason behind that?
So it's all based upon an educated guess. And I don't think that when you're doing such a big uproot, because it's not just the podcast, there's a whole lot of things that are changing with us currently. But it's been in the works now for maybe 9 months, just thinking about it at first and sort of sensing some pull. And it's like, okay, like, because when we bought this house 4 years ago, our son was 1 year old. He was just a toddler crawling around and walking around and whatnot. And we always thought, okay, this is the house. We're going to lay down our roots here. This is the first home we've ever bought. We really connect with it. And, I don't ever see us moving. And then, of course, 4 years later, now we're moving. It's like, how did that happen, So there's a lot of contributing factors. I mean, COVID's a big one. That's an enormous one. But also, too, like my wife's pregnant now. She's due in December, late December, with our daughter, who's going to be named Amelia Roma. That's going to be her name.
That's awesome. Congratulations, man.
Thanks, man.
That's really cool.
So we're having now we have our son Harrison, who just turned 5, and then Amelia, so a son and a daughter. So that's really fantastic. But we have this flower shop. We have this flower shop. We've had it now. I guess we would be going into our 10th year of business this October. And unfortunately, there was a fire recently that happened 2 months ago next to our building. So all these buildings are all stuck together, old downtown buildings. There's no firewalls. There's none of that. So fire happens, pretty significant. It was some flat top roofers. They torched the roof, and the smoke, man, it destroyed our store. And so we've been dealing with insurance shit. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so that's been fun. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. What do you mean by flat top roofers? Do you just mean like on our barn we have the chicken house is a flat top with like a rubber roof? Is that what you're referring to?
Well, so like you would have like just a membrane roof which doesn't require heat or acetylene torches and things like that, and then the old school style is a tar roof. And they're pretty dangerous. Okay. I mean, like, as far as the risk is concerned, that's pretty old school technology, and that's a stretch to use the word technology with that. But, a lot of times when you're renovating a building like that with a flat roof, they want to see a membrane go down because there's no chance for combustion, and things like this happening, right? So... But anyway, so these people are torching away, and like the crazy thing is that there's an apartment above the pharmacy that caught fire, and there was a person who coincidentally did all of the mudding in my house, who was sleeping on the couch while it happened, and he happened to wake up. Now the roofers knew he was in there, and didn't come to get him, so it could have been manslaughter, right? It could have been a lot worse. So.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Man, oh man.
And a lot of times these flat top roofers don't have insurance. Now they may present some form that you would then sign that looks like insurance, but is not, because it's just impossible to have a claim, like to have insurance policy when that's the work you do, because of the risk involved. Like insurance companies won't go near it unless you pay $1 million in insurance,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like an 18-year-old getting on a crotch rocket. Well, yeah, we'll price you out of that, just with the insurance alone.
Yeah.
The insurance will be worth more than the
so you want to buy a little piece of, there's 2 wheels and it goes 200 miles an hour. And you're 18 years old, man. This is not going to end well for us. It looks fun. It looks fun. When I was a kid, I wanted a motorcycle. And then I looked at the insurance rates, to your point, and I'm like, this just tells me right off the bat, the likelihood of me getting in an accident is high based on the fact that they're covering their butts, as it pertains to liability with insurance.
Absolutely.
This is a dumb idea. Plus, I just started playing drums, and it's like, kind of like my hands and my feet intact.
Yeah, you chose a safer option, I guess, and insurance.
Yeah.
Right.
Tractors. I chose tractors.
There you go. And I love tractors too. I totally get that. So anyways, with all that, right? Amanda's about to give birth, and with Harrison, when she had him, she was back at work 3 days later, man. Like, I'm like, you're not doing that again. Like, you really missed out on a lot of stuff, because this is such a demanding industry. This business, when you're not there, you're always thinking about it, or at the drop of a hat, you need to come to the rescue and solve a problem. And it's like, I want you to like actually experience motherhood in the sense of like you give birth and now you get to spend time with your child, you know, and
exactly.
And I'll go back to work and I'll do that. I'll go back and run equipment again, you know, like that's fine. So, you know, just with the timeline of everything, it's like, okay, so we're getting out of the business. So kind of no reason to stick around anymore. And where we moved, you know, the housing market's ridiculous, right? I mean,
oh my gosh.
Right? So our house that we paid very little for because no one wanted it, we're like, man, this thing is worth like over 2 times what we paid for it. And I've done most of the work myself.
Wow.
So
good for you.
Right? So let's cash in on that and make a pile of money and then take that money and buy land. Let's do that. So we've gotten really enthusiastic about homesteading, farming, things of that nature, so that we know where our food comes from. We're really passionate about growing food. I want to dig a half-acre earthed-in pond. There's lots of clay in this area in the soil, so it'll hold the water. Stock that shit with largemouth bass and shell crackers and bluegills, and like have another food source. And then we have about 17 chickens here at our place. We sort of tampered with homesteading here a little bit with the small amount of land we have here. But we really like that. Chickens are awesome, and the kid loves them, and they're like maintenance free practically. And so there's our eggs, there's our meat, and let's get another 20. So we'll have 37 chickens or something like that, and then a couple pigs. And there you go. Like there's a lot of food there, just in the meat and the eggs. And then we got like a garden bed now that's like 100 feet long and 50 feet wide, so we can do annual gardens there and grow a lot of our own food. And then permaculture is something that we want to get involved with and try doing like a food forest. Yeah, something that's generational that over time will just get better and better and better. So that's our interest, you know, and we needed land to do that, but we can't afford anything around here. So we bought in a sleepy market, and it happens to be called the Banana Belt because they don't really get winters here in this area like they do everywhere else. It's like, besides Victoria, BC, this area has the best agricultural weather. So perfect. And it's flat. It's flat, you know, but again, like, can grow lots. There's a Quonset hut that's like 100 feet long. We can do a bunch of stuff in there with aquaponics and hydroponics, kind of get things cracking, do all that so we can get things ready for in the spring. But yeah, man, so that's where our head's at. So we really wanted to do that. So we ended up buying a place with 4.7 acres, which is plenty for us to do our little micro farming situation. And it meant, though, like, all of this means like selling the house, getting rid of the business, quit the podcast, go back to, because I can't feed my family on what I was getting paid to do that, right? I mean,
that's right.
It was great for the time being when we had the shop, and that was our primary income, and that's great. And I got to be a stay-at-home dad and make enough money to pay my mortgage and then some. But it just doesn't make sense now. I need to make real money, you know. So.
It sounds like you made a decision that was really rooted in your family and not just your own personal interests, but you saying, I mean, at some point, I'm just thinking about this, at some point you had to sit down and you had to say, I like doing what I'm doing, but me doing what I like is not the priority here. I have to think about the long game. I have to think about my family and the sustainability of our current interests versus our future interests. And it sounds like, you know, you had to make some sacrifices. Like I know you're kind of making it seem like this is something that's kind of like a dream that you're living out, but obviously baked into that are all of these things that you had to struggle with at night. Like, oh, man, but I really like this, or are you really sure about this? Or do we really want to do this? Like, look at what I'm giving up, you know, and all of these selfish things come out when you're having to make a decision like that doesn't directly benefit just you. And,
that's right.
And I think that what you did, I mean, obviously us talking about it right now, it's like, wow, it sounds like you have a great life. It sounds like you're fulfilled, but I think it's easy to miss those areas along the way where you had to just fight and struggle. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking like, I want to get to that point where I'm doing what I want to do, coming off of something else I also like doing, there's going to be a lot of time in there that we don't tend to talk about, which is that That's frustrating, just struggling, battling with what sucks about the process too.
There's sacrifice. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, and so with that, I think there's beauty in that. I think that when things are challenging or you're taking on things that you've never done before, it might come into someone's mind, I've never done that, therefore I'm not that, therefore I cannot be that. And I don't like the word can't at all. Can't to me is a cop-out. That's bullshit. And I just don't believe in that word. Like everything I've done in my house, dude, is the first time I've done it. And I went out and I bought the tools because I couldn't get anyone to come in to do it.
Oh,
and
that is awesome.
Right? Just go on YouTube. I'm not kidding. I go on YouTube I learn how to do it. And then I go and do it the next day.
That's how I built all of this. All of this. I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
It's like,
that's just it. But I bet you
out.
now you do know a fair bit more than you did, right? And that's the thing. Now you can start compounding interest, it's just, okay, now I know this, I got some foundation under me, and maybe now I can even just think for myself, and what do I think would work here, and then you can execute it, and it's like, wow, I'm doing it, and there's so much satisfaction in that, and
there is,
and I think too, there's these very primary things that we can do in our lives that it makes me emotional these days, like thinking about food. And with my new podcast, I'm going to be following and documenting this uprooting and this homesteading and sharing these things that come up and things that happen. And
that's cool. Okay.
Yeah, like that's part of it. And human rights is another part of it, and philosophy and psychology aspects, and just, and all based upon just experiences and literally no holds barred. Just, this is what's up. This is what's happened to me in my life, and this is how I'm working through it. And you can choose to fester on that negativity. And when things around you are like a cyclone of negativity, you can be so attracted to that and fester on it. And this rumination on the negativity, it disables you from being able to also see at the same time the positivity and the things that you could be doing in spite of that, in a sense. It's like, well, if you're going to do this to me, what can I do to crawl out of this hole? And I also believe that at all points of life, there's dark and there's light, and they're happening simultaneously. And again, that darkness can be really distracting, and you don't even see the positives that could be happening. Yeah, the store's burning down. This is happening. That's happening. Well, there's so many good things, though. I met a guy on the street who I talked about earlier, was sleeping on the couch, and he ended up mudding my house, and that was cool. And he made some money because he didn't have a place to live. And it's like, cool, man. Like I was able to pay you cash for some work that you are good at. And like, I just find like you can really dig in to those moments, and it's some really great things can happen as a course of that, right?
Yeah.
What's the name of your new podcast?
Shootin' the Shit with Seamus.
The best.
Okay.
The very best.
Oh my god, dude, the new jingle's hilarious. So I was sitting in here and I was wanting to do like a harmony, a stacked harmony thing. So it's like shooting shit. And so I'm like, and then I have my kid's harmonica, and I really like the C and D notes, right? So I ended with that, but it's just funny to me. Like, it's 9 seconds long, and it makes me laugh. Here, you want me to play it for you? Have you heard this before?
Yeah, I want to hear it. I want to hear this.
Here, I'll play it. This is jokes, man.
Tim, this is going to be an easy podcast episode to put easy, graphics and audio to.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, cool.
Where's Seamus?
Right?
Yes.
Incredible. Incredible.
Yeah, it's very.
I kind of want that
homebrew.
just like on a personal level. Every time I'm having a bad day, just tap that on my, on my voice memo. Just
I'll perk you right up, brother.
perk you right up.
But no, I'm really stoked about the new show too, man, because it's, you know what, I'm not spending a load of time on it. I don't have to schedule anybody. I don't have to do any of that. And whenever an opportunity comes around, like I was saying to Tim in the pre-chat, like my neighbor's a biker. He's going to get me in touch with some bikers, and we're going to talk about bikers' rights, and that's great content. I mean, like, let's talk about that. Why not? Like, these people are misunderstood. They're they're the pit bulls of society, and they're heavily misunderstood. So I don't know. I just think that would be really cool, and just kind of let it like, I don't want it to be about anything. I just want it to be whatever comes around, and it's like, oh, that's really like capturing my interest, or I have something to say now. That happens too, where it's just like, boom, I got it in my head, it's on my heart, I got to spit it out now into the mic. And I've done this stuff long enough, I can talk forever, and it's no labor. It's effortless, it's not hard. So I wanted to keep doing
easy.
it, right? So
I'm really glad that you're continuing this. I think, like, I picture myself if I didn't have August Burns Red, right? And I was just playing drums for fun. I would hope that I wouldn't fall off and just stop playing drums completely. So with you not having Drumeo, I'm really glad that you're making the decision to continue doing this podcast, because you're good at it. And you think in a way that is very interesting to me. It's unique, and it's unlike a lot of our other guests. They, in their own right, have a unique way of thinking, but yours is coming at it from it seems like more of a psychological level, where you're thinking about what's underneath of everything else that's happening at any given time. And I think, our generation cares in a huge way about social justice. Our generation cares in a huge way about, like, there was a wrong that was done against this person, and I want to make sure that doesn't happen again. And regardless of your faith or wherever you're coming from in your worldview, that seems to be a common denominator. And I'm glad that it sounds like you're going to be speaking to some of that. And it sounds like you'll be filling some of that space. But you won't be restricted to, like, one little corner, which I think will give you the freedom to have more fun with it and feel more freedom with it. I think Tim and I at times feel frustrated with, even though we have two pretty broad topics, it's like, all right, Tim, what's our drum topic today?
Yeah.
It's like, well, we've pretty much covered everything, like paradiddles, double diddles, triple diddles, like what else, what else are we going to cover? I mean, we've gotten to the point where, like, Tim, we've talked about, like, things that have nothing to really do with drumming, but more so the psychology of drumming.
Exactly. We've definitely branched out into the psychological side of drumming rather than, like, drum dynamics, or symbols, or and
say it, like, after 260 episodes, I was feeling like I was running out of stuff to ask. Like, I've covered a lot of material, and it kind of feels like I'm retreading the tire now, and it's like I'm just personally not getting as much out of it, and
right.
Yeah. So I think for me, this is perfect. I kind of just do whatever I want, and it's completely on my terms. And man, because I always felt friction, right? I mean, I talked about this while I left Drumeo. Man, I'm not like them. I liked them, and I got along great with them. But who I am and what I would like to portray is not what they portray. I'm like not that, right. Like, I don't look like the kind of guy who's on, like, Sesame Street and, like, with stuffed animals and shit, and like so jolly. Like, I'm a happy guy, don't get me wrong, but, like, I'm rated R and they're rated PG, and there's a definite friction there, where I always felt like, although they never said this ever, and they always said, do your own thing, I never felt like I truly could. Because, like, my real thing, dude,
man,
is gonna stretch your audience pretty thin, and you might not thank me for that down the road.
Yeah, I think you were really good for Drumeo, and I think Drumeo was really good for you. Like, I actually think it was, though I understand that friction, I think that you gave Drumeo a certain level of credibility from an outside perspective, right? When I did the interview with you, the podcast with you, my interpretation or my idea of Drumeo was glossed over, very pro and buttered up and perfected and highly produced, and nothing inerrant or nothing surprising about this podcast, right? And then I go on and you're like, so, dude, how the hell are you? Let's hang out. And I'm like, huh? Is this the right guy, right? Yeah, okay. This is awesome, man. Like, we're shooting the hip
shooting the
here.
shit with
So,
Seamus.
That's right.
there you go. I mean, it's perfect.
But
then to that, I think, Drumeo benefited from that and you, but I think you benefited from Drumeo in that, this is a chapter of your life that I think you'll look back on, and you had such a cool work environment where you were able to talk to some of my heroes. You were able to talk to, I'm sure, some of your heroes, and though I'm sure it's draining at times, that is a really cool opportunity that you had and that they gave you. And from what I understand, Jared did a good job of giving you that freedom to do that.
He's a great dude. I've said this so many times, both on my personal show with just as much sincerity as I would on a Drumeo Gab podcast episode. Whereas, I wonder, well, of course he's going to say he's good shit on that show because, it's Drumeo Gab. But on my own personal show, I expressed my liking to him, and I consider him a really good friend. I hope that we get to hang out again in the future. And to your point, Matt, dude, I grew a lot because of them. And I know this for a lot of the people who work there, that it's true for them too. There's sort of like this wounded bird thing going on there where it's kind of like, they take you in and they trust you and they treat you well. They present lots of challenging situations for you, which, man, I threw myself in the fire a lot of times. Like, my ass is burning red. I know it's August burns red. My ass is burning red because I was sitting in that thing all the time. It's like, man, I haven't fully collected myself from the last one. So they really challenged me a lot. And man, I mean, here's a clutch moment. I mean, I remember bringing Dom Famulero back to my hotel to talk to him. And we did our interview. I'm like, okay, now I got to run back and get Jojo Mayer. And I'm running down the streets of Vancouver to go meet up with Jojo. We walk back, and I'm in the bathroom just sort of looking over my notes real quick. I'd use the washroom too, but looking over my notes where it's like, okay, I have to quickly memorize this.
Shooting the shit with Seamus.
Dropping the shit with Seamus, bro.
Well, I didn't know. Maybe you were shooting it. I don't know.
But, dude, I'm looking over my notes that I wrote ahead of time with the assumption, what if I get my JoJo interview, which I really wanted. Like, that was, to me, that was the one, right? And I got it by just standing up and asking him. Jared's like, do you want someone to accompany you? I'm like, no, I got this, man. Like, that'll just make it more weird. So I'm looking over these notes that I wrote like 3 weeks ago before the date. And I'm looking over and I'm memorizing that while JoJo's talking to Dom in the next room. It's like, okay, man, I've never been in this pressure situation before. And I mean, it's not exactly the same as, beaches in Normandy or anything, but still, I mean, it's something, right? It's like, wow, like my integrity, my everything is kind of feeling like it's on the line right now. And I have to produce with somebody that I really have a lot of affinity towards. I mean, I got a drum set upstairs that he played years ago, and he remembered me, believe it or not.
Oh, my goodness.
He remembered me from a clinic in Canada. Yeah, he's an outstanding person. Like, JoJo's awesome. I heard some horror stories about JoJo, and I'm like, ooh, I don't know what I'm getting into. Is he going to, like, just roast me or what? Nah, man, he was awesome. And, like, dude,
was he? That's cool.
Awesome guy. So, like, we're talking about artificial intelligence and all this crazy stuff because that guy's brain's fucking huge, right? And we get to a red light and we have to stop, right? And he gets in front of me to continue engaging with me. That's how intentional that man is. Yeah, no, I love JoJo. He's a great dude.
I've never met JoJo, but I would love to meet him someday. I mean, his playing has just been incredible ever since I first found out about him, and he's fascinating to me because you don't really hear much about him. You don't really see too much of him. It's like when he shows up, like Tim, you and I have talked about this. Social media is just loaded with drummers, right? And you have someone like Aaron Spears who posts every once in a while, and everyone watches it because it's infrequent. And I feel like Jojo Mayer is even more like that to the nth degree, in that if anything about him pops up, it's like 200,000 views because they're not inundated with him playing. It's like, it's special. Right. It's still a treat.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always encouraging hearing stories like you just told about a drummer who you kind of see from afar and know they're incredible, but don't actually know anything about them personally. Mm-hmm. And to hear something like that, where it's kind of affirming, like, okay, he's a good dude. Like, you have every right to look up to him, and it's always nice for me.
I think it might have went another way though if I had have stuck my neck out, asked for the interview, and then showed up and didn't know what I was there for. He's that guy. He'd blow you to pieces, man. If you asked for his time and you didn't know why, and then you show up and you have nothing to talk about, that would drive him insane.
True.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think like part of why he and I got along was because I showed up very prepared and I had intention. Like, I knew why I wanted to talk to him. There was things in particular I really wanted to ask him for years, and it's like, I want to talk to him, and so it wasn't a waste of his time. He really enjoyed it. So that was one of my highlights in my life. That was just such a great thing. And had it not been for Drumeo, that would have never happened, and so I never forget these things. It's like some people maybe when they hear, oh, Seamus isn't doing the Drumeo thing anymore, they might think, oh, like, yeah, I always thought Drumeo was something, like, no, man, that wasn't it. That wasn't it at all. And had it been for COVID, I probably would have continued that thing. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know.
Is that right?
Possibly.
Wow.
Possibly. I mean, it really a step back, man.
That kind of forced your hand, it gave you an opportunity to make a big change. I was thinking about this earlier, Seamus. What is it that you think drummers need to? You've talked to a lot of drummers, and when you're asking them questions or you're talking about their drumming, or in your case just shooting the shit with them, what is something that you feel like drummers understand that maybe bikers don't, or that someone else outside of this industry really doesn't have a good grasp on? And what I mean by this is, what I see in drummers is this level of work ethic that I see in farming, I see in my blue collar friends who are working their butts off, but there's this level of work ethic that almost drives them to continue playing more than like their love for just drumming. Mm-hmm. So what is it that maybe you've seen that has been a common thread in a lot of the drummers you've talked to across the board?
Well, that's going to be fun to answer, because I do have an answer to this, and it's an opinion that I've held now for quite a while after interviewing so many drummers.
Right.
I would say, and I'm not saying that all drummers are like this, I think that people who truly identify with the role of drumming, not just the instrument, but the role of it, they're quiet leaders. That's what I believe. I think like drummers are the leaders of a band. I 100% endorse that idea, but they're quiet about it, and they're willing to stand back, and through persuasion, by how they play dynamically, when they put their foot down and say, this is when this happens now, these sorts of things. A good drummer is a confident person who can lead a group of people to play a successful show. And I think without that, you're not a good drummer. Even if you play all the licks and you got all the shit that's super fancy and all of that, and you spent your entire life devoted to the I guess you could say the execution of the physical part of drumming. Drumming is very psychological, and I think that somebody who can read a room, somebody can read a person, understand how to blend to others, and I'm going to call it the platinum rule, which I've heard around, where you treat others the way you think they want to be treated, I think is a very keen skill to have as a good drummer. Just knowing when to put your foot down with certain things and make decisions in the moment or in the studio or whatever not. I don't know. That's what I think. And I've noticed that in a lot of the drummers I always felt were really great drummers musically. Like, say, take JoJo for an example. That guy is a very strong character. When you sit next to him, you feel it coming off him. It's like this person takes himself relatively seriously, but he's very intentional, and he has, a very, just a very firm grasp on the room, and he's very good at that, and when you play music at the level he does, he's making some pretty courageous decisions at times where it's like, wow, that's a lot of notes, but wow, did that ever work? So he has to have a lot of trust in himself, right? But then you have, say, a drummer like Charlie Watts, God bless his soul. Man, I've been listening to a lot of Stones before that happened. And listen to Shattered, that's some basic drumming. It's got a bit of slop in it. It almost sounds punk rock, but just in how sloppy it is. But man, is it ever good. He was a great drummer, man. It's one of my favorites. But
so sad. Man.
Yeah, very sad.
Yeah, I was really bummed about that. And like I said, I've been listening to a lot of the Stones lately. Not in lieu of his death, but because I love the Stones, and I've always really liked his drumming. But it actually took me a lot of years to appreciate it. But same with Ringo and Phil Rudd and stuff like that. It's like, it's simple. I'm not hearing the thing, but it's there, and it's hard to emulate that kind of thing. But I know Charlie Watts was like the same kind of cat too. I heard stories about Charlie Watts, and the guy was a pretty strong character, and I think it just shows in his drumming, maybe by how much he did play. And it's like, I don't need to. I'm confident playing that, and I don't need to over-embellish myself so that I may feel worthy of this music or to be involved in this group or whatever not. He was just a silent, strong drummer. And that's what I've noticed in a lot of the drummers that I personally felt anyways through their playing. And I feel too that how a person plays is how a person is. I think that the character of a person is completely transferable from the drumming itself and the person and who they are. I think the two mirror each other, and you could tell a lot. And it's funny, I sometimes have these predictions. It's like, I've listened to this player. I've listened to them play a lot. I'm catching the vibe. I know where this is coming from.
You're making me feel really insecure about myself right now. I'm like, I just want to know, what did you think I would be like?
Yeah,
when
Matt,
I first
Seamus knows
on?
everything about you just by listening to your drumming.
Well, if I'm being...
That's going to be oh my gosh, man. Drinking water through a fire hose over here.
So here's the thing with that, though, and I'll be perfectly honest. I don't listen to that kind of music, and so I knew what you did. But I had you on because I liked the personality I saw in your videos and the way that you addressed your audience verbally. So I didn't have you on really so much because I was such a huge fan of your playing. Although you're a great drummer, it's not what I gravitate towards. It was more because of your demeanor in front of camera, and I really wanted to get to know you a little bit better. But I'm talking with drummers I've been listening to for a while, a long time. Like Billy Martin, I listened to him a lot. Going back 15, 20 years, it's like, I think I know what kind of person he's going to be. And it was a very abstract dude, and very interesting. It was very cool. But
what about an artist? Have you talked to an artist that gave you a vibe through their playing, and then you talk to them and you're like, wow, this is really, really different from what I thought it was going to be?
Not that, but I would say how they carried themselves in front of camera. I would say to establish brand identity with their audience, and it's as marketing as a business. And then it's like, wow, you're the nicest person I've ever met. And then never hear from you ever again. Even get in touch with you, email, nothing. It's like, I get it. I understand. I get it.
Yeah. Sure.
I don't hold anything against that type of person really, but because I understand that these are very high level people who are very, very busy, and they probably don't have time for little old me, but just the same, the way that things are proposed and then actually, I feel might be a little different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Which was disappointing.
Yeah, that is.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to ask you about something. And I'm also keeping our time in mind, which is why I want to hit this now. We've been talking about other drummers, about you as a podcaster. I want to talk a little bit about you as a drummer. One of my favorite things, next to just how you conduct yourself on your podcast episodes, is the videos that I guess more recently you've been posting of, I was just on the kit and I just did this cool thing and I want to show you guys because I have been loving that. So tell us a little bit about you as a drummer, your background as a drummer and what you like to do on the kit.
Okay, so my background as a drummer is I'm self-taught. What was that?
Mm-hmm. That was my kick drum, sorry.
Tim got excited.
Damn, that sounds pretty good, buddy.
I'm sitting,
Tim, what's that tune to?
That's
C
hilarious.
sharp?
Yeah.
Sounds pretty good.
I'm using
man.
it as a footrest and I slipped on it. Yeah.
Is that new EMAD 2 you got on there?
That's it.
That's hilarious.
Sorry about that.
No, that was fantastic.
I loved it.
Me too. So I'm self-taught, right? I never took the drumming thing that seriously. I love music, first and foremost. I've always been a lover of music, which I've returned to, as a result of all these renovations and stuff. I mean, you got to have tunes going. So I got my playlist, and I listen to tunes all the time. So I kind of get back into how I used to consume music, like when I was a kid or when I was just younger and drums really weren't the focal point of my interest at the time. So not really listening to the drum parts is what I'm saying. I'm kind of back to that again, which is nice, because there for a while it was just what's the drummer doing? And always listening to that and probably missing out on a lot of other great stuff in the music. So I was very detail oriented with that, always listening for parts and sort of the expression, the intention. Some of my favorite drummers are Steve Gadd, Bernard Purdy, Jeff Porcaro, all those cats, mostly all those studio drummers, Jim Gordon, all that kind of stuff, man. But then I started finding fusion, and then it started opening up this huge channel of virtuosos, and then that really became my interest. And I don't know, man. So here's the thing. I grew up in a small town, farming town, and it was one of those things, I'm sure, Matt, you've talked about this before, where it's being in a band and doing that whole thing where I live probably isn't going to happen. And I accepted that, not begrudgingly, I accepted that. It was more of an influence, too, on my folks. They're don't do the music thing. There's nothing in that. Mm-hmm. And I bought it, and I believed it, and that sucks. I kind of wish maybe that I maybe just made my own decision, but I wasn't really confident at that age to go against the wisdom of my parents, But I mean, fortunately for me, I feel anyways, this last 5 years with the podcast was sort of, that was it was a gift delivered late, it happened 15, 20 years after, but I got to experience it a bit. So that was cool, right? But man, my drumming for me got me through a lot of hardships. I kind of consider them just like a friend in a way. Mm-hmm. I go back and forth, and I know that being involved with the podcast, I had to really get into trying to play more high-level stuff and really make myself known with it a bit anyway, so that people know, hey, the guy who's asking the questions plays. He can play the drums. Mm-hmm. So I felt like that was important to represent yourself as someone who can actually play. So I worked hard on my drumming, especially during the podcast years. I've been so tied up lately, I haven't even played. But there's some stuff coming through here and there that's pretty fun. It's well within my abilities and all of that. But I would say drumming for me is kind of it's I don't have to worry about that relationship, man. That's just it's you've been with me all these years. I always come to you and beat the hell out of you whenever I needed to, and you took it, and I met a lot of friends because of drums, and and so for me, my drumming is just sort of this. It's just an enjoyable pastime, and I really like to play, and I love feeling the zone, and I love transcending time and space in a sense with it when those moments strike, and I think that's a really enjoyable thing, and it's definitely worth me at least keeping things sharp enough so that I can get there and enjoy
Yeah.
myself on the instrument. I just love drums, man. I don't know. There's not a whole lot more I can really say about it. And as far as what kind of drummer I am, I don't know. I'm just me, I guess.
Yeah, I love that, dude. Everything you just said resonates with me so much. I mean, that's exactly where I'm at this point in life, and we talk about it on the podcast because the contrast between Matt being such a high level drummer, a professional drummer at that, and then me, where drums takes a back seat to my kids, and my family and my career.
Right.
But it's so cool, and I think that every drummer listening to this, no matter where they are, resonates with that in some way, and just that the drums, they're always there for you, like even the drummer who hasn't picked up the sticks since he was 13 or 14, like they could go back to that kit and it's gonna be familiar, it's gonna feel good, it's gonna be friendly,
Yeah.
It's wild how drums communicate with us in that way,
I think I think my relationship with drumming is a lot like yours, actually, like both of you guys. I didn't think in the beginning that I got any aggression out or that I had any emotion when I was playing drums. It was just a mechanical thing. And in the most recent years, I really had a hard time for a couple years with some personal things that were going on. And I started to realize, I don't know if you guys have had this or not, but if you're going through something personally and you're playing drums, you might not be playing because of what's going on in your life, or you might not be playing because you feel like you need to get out some pent-up aggression or anything like that. But sitting down and playing, I found that I had something in drumming that I hadn't found in any other aspect of my life. I mean, even my faith, even my prayer life, even my experience with other Christians or God. And I think it has something to do with, I believe that God's put this desire to play drums in my heart. And when I play drums, I'm doing exactly what I was designed to do. And I only really realized this when I was going through my divorce. And I sat down and I played, and I really didn't have anything else that was working in my life. Everything seemed like it was falling apart. And I'd sit here, I'd pick up my sticks, I'd start playing. And it just worked. It was like, this has always worked. And it's always given me something that has fulfilled me in such a big way. It's never really, you have bad practices, you have bad shows, you guys know what that's like, but like, it hasn't let me down over the long term. And I really appreciate that about drumming, and I appreciate that about our podcast and just relationships like we have here, where we can talk about it and it's like, oh yeah, you guys have that too. That's not just my experience, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's true for me too, Matt. I've had some pretty overwhelming experiences in my life where either it be sticks or hand drums were, in front of me, and that's what I was doing at the time. And something channeled through me and created a response. And a lot of times it's powerful. And I feel like, like you said, this sort of innate interest level that you can't tell me not to play. I mean,
That's right.
you could have so many bad practices, get so frustrated with it, but no, man, it's like a good marriage, It's like, you have your ups and downs with it, but you don't bail on it.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
You don't, is there
That's
something
exactly
better for
right.
me? No, this is really happening. This is meant for you. And I think that it's important to acknowledge that. When I see people discussing their issues with their drumming, I even had somebody drop a comment in Drumeo saying, you sound depressed about that. And just to be clear, I'm never depressed about my drumming. I mean, I had moments in my life where I felt like working construction, doing asphalt work, when I thought I was bound to be a musician. And working in the music industry, I somehow made a massive error in my life choices. But man, at the very least, the furthest I can stretch into that direction would be something like this. There are interruptions in life, and then sometimes you tell yourself this is where it needs to go, but then these interruptions keep happening, and it stunts the ability for you to actually get there to the kid, or another thing, now the kid wants this, and blah blah blah, and you kind of feel like that every moment you're not practicing, and it's like, man, you're like, take it away from me, like what, and so I felt that before, but I feel like when I place less emphasis on the drums, they become more enjoyable somehow. Maybe not in the long run. And this is there's a fine line with this, I think, because if you really put in a lot of effort, then you get to enjoy more spoils, I think. But maybe does that say that your head space is it's never good enough and you're never satisfied? Like, I don't know, whereas if I just accept that, hey, this is how I play right now, and man, do I ever love doing this, and I'm getting a sound that I dig, and I'm playing with other people, I like the sound that they're making. I don't need to play the most complicated things to really make this song work. I get a lot of joy out of playing in a band. The one thing I don't really like is playing by myself. I don't like doing that very much. And I did that for way too long. But at the same time, I don't like lugging around my shit for $100 a night, if that.
Right. Right.
And then it all went to gas. And then you got a couple beers. And then you got some fish and chips. And now you're knocked down to $30. Like, I'm making nothing.
Yeah, you lost money.
Yeah.
Right?
You got to replace that snare head, dude.
Dude, and then like it's 1 a.m. and you're finally getting home and you're just bagged, and I better haul my shit out of my truck though, because if I don't do that, it might not be there in the morning. Like,
right?
You just feel overworked and underpaid, and so that sort of drove a wedge between me and drums. But I feel if I can have a casual, just spontaneous thing, and it's like that will just be fun, man, am I ever glad I play, right? So, but
I taught a. Actually, you might know about this. There's a co-op in Canada. I'm not exactly sure what the full name of it is, but I was asked to speak to this panel of artists.
Okay.
The Canadian Musicians Co-op is what it was called.
I'm not familiar.
Okay. Well, I did this week, and it was really interesting. Actually, I wasn't sure where everyone was coming from. They were just artists. That's how they were. That's how they were introduced to me. But I talked about how I gave 4 points of how to be an artist on tour and be successful and be someone that's likable and has sustainability. And so the 1 point was this. I said, play your show, switch gears, and get off stage. And the reason that I had this experience and I wrote about this and talked about it is because I used to play shows, and if it was a really good show, I'd walk around with my chin up and I wouldn't leave the stage area. I would just sort of hang around and maybe see how the next band is and like feel really good about myself. Like I can live in this space, I'm proud. I'm inflated. On the contrary, if I played a really poor show, I would go to the van and I'd sit in the corner and I would just kind of hide, like, cross my arms and sulk a little bit. And what I realized was I was being robbed of all joy of traveling the world because my performance was based on my identity was based on my performance. And so if I played a really good show, I felt inflated, and if I played a poor show, I felt depressed, and there was no foundation for who I was beyond how I was doing at that show or how I was performing. And I think to your point that you just made about drumming, you finding freedom in drumming when you give up this idea that it has to be everything for you. Your identity cannot be in your performance on drums. If it's that, your drumming will never provide what you need it to. It's going to fail you. If your identity isn't something deeper than your performance or this instrument, then it can give you more than you think it can. Like you'll be surprised at how much it'll give you. And I found this out the hard way. Unfortunately, years and years of touring, like people would ask me, "What's Chicago like?" or "What's Nashville like?" I'm like, I don't know. I played the show and went right to the van because I had a bad show and I didn't feel like going anywhere, And it's like, man, I really missed out on all those years, And now I'm better at it, but obviously it's still enough of a recent thing that I can talk about it, and I feel the hair go up on my arms because I remember what it was like to play that shitty show in Eastern Europe where I got off from the click track and my whole week was ruined,
That's so funny. You know,
so
to that point, I
that's
would say
tough.
like a Ford Econoline van looks like a Ford Econoline van, no matter where it's parked. That's how it was.
That's exactly what it was too. 15
was it?
passenger, baby.
I figured you're a Ford guy, so I'm like, yeah, he probably rocked around in a Econoline.
I am actually a Ford guy.
Yeah,
Back
yeah.
seat, arms crossed, cowered over
Yeah.
in the corner. Don't talk to me. Don't feed me. Don't love me. Don't touch me. I'm here because I want to be here.
Oh man, found only really depressed.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I think we found our cover, Tim.
Yeah, there you go.
Ford
Oh,
logo.
That's so good. It's just like Matt, just like, you know, like
Yeah.
that. And maybe pissing on a Chevy logo. I don't know. I don't
One
know.
of those.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that little guy. He's got his pee stream.
That's right.
Man, how'd they get away with that?
Oh, I don't know. They sure they made quite a business out of that, though. Hey, that's funny.
Oh yes,
That's
yes they did.
hilarious,
Was that
dude.
Calvin and Hobbes?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so
I
funny.
forgot about that.
There was
That's hilarious.
there was a thing I was saying to Tim. Given the fact that it's the Holy Ghost notes, and I wanted to share a story, something that happened the other day. If that's all right with you guys, I think you'll
please
like
do.
this.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, I've had like a lot of situations with Christianity over the course of my life. I went to a Bible horse camp, for an example, and I tell this entire story in my new podcast. See, look at that plug. That's how you do it. You know, you don't want to like just press pause and then plug it.
Shooting the Shit with Seamus.
You know what I mean?
Check it.
But man, I've had a lot of experiences with this. I mean, I used to play in a worship band. Some of my most powerful moments on stage happened during worship. You know, which is interesting because I think in those times, although I did do those things, it was in a sense, I'd almost go as far to say it was like I was exploiting something because it was my only good opportunity to play music. These were good musicians, great sound guy, good drums. Didn't have to lug anything. I just showed up with my snare and sticks
Show up.
and sat down and played. And like the music wasn't bad. I liked the arrangements, actually, a lot of the Hillsong stuff. And like I didn't mind it musically at all. But I wasn't in it. Like my
Same.
heart wasn't in it like that. And it caught up with me a couple of times. I do remember that. But I've been having a lot of thoughts lately about what a stage of my life with spirituality. And because I know faith is part of your show and your theme, this is why I'm mentioning this. I like to take Harrison, my son, on tractor rides. So I'll load him up in the trailer and then get my X350 out and take it down to he likes going to the cemetery because it's just down my street, and then we cut it around the cornfield, and then we can go right in there. And the past couple of times, you know, there as you go down the pathway, I remember the first time, it's called the Sacred Heart Cemetery. You go down one of the roads, and there's just like a really big sculpture of the scene of the crucifixion of Jesus, right? And you see it at the end of this road, and it's pretty cool. Like there's a power to it. There's some gravity to this thing. And I remember the first time seeing it, and I was kind of like, wow, that's like beautiful. Like it really is. Like that's quite the thing. And it's big and it's impressive. It's got size to it. And Harrison's been asking questions about Jesus, you know, and I don't have a lot to share with him other than the little bit that I do know. But the last time we went, he was like really attracted to this sculpture. And so we walked down and we looked at it, and we got really, really close to it, like closer to it than we ever had. And, you know, he's asking me questions about it and like, what's going on? And I'm like, well, I mean, he was nailed to the cross, and this is how he died. And this is what people believe Jesus was like, and he's a really good man. And I don't know a lot, right? So I'm telling him very primary stuff, but sharing. Right. But as I'm saying it, even though I don't know a lot about it, and I don't have a lot of influence either, because I wasn't influenced a whole lot because I didn't grow up with Christian family or anything like that.
Right.
So my interpretation of it is sort of, I'm making it up like a kid would, I just know a little bit. But I reflect upon things as I'm explaining this stuff to him. And I'm starting to think, why are we so attracted to this right now? And why is he asking so many questions about it? And why am I feeling like this when I'm talking about it? And it's making me really emotional, as we're talking about this, and so anyways, so we get back on the tractor, and he wanted to say goodbye to him. I was like, yeah, let's do that. That sounds great. So we go around the cemetery again, and we go down the road, and I turn the tractor off, and we're just there looking at it again. And we start talking about it again. I was like, well, Harrison, people pray, do you know what praying means? And he's like, no. And I was like, well, it's when people talk to him, and they share some thoughts with him, or it's something that's on their mind, or, and people do that. It helps a lot of people. And so I was like, do you want to try? And I don't pray, man. I don't do this, I'm a novice. I'm a newbie at this, and I don't know what I'm doing. But, I just felt really, really compelled to talk to him about the good nature of Jesus, and what people believe he was, and how absent this is today. This is what I'm getting at. I feel like it's so absent. The fact that people cancel each other when they have an opposing point of view, and he died because of that, because he did his own thing, and he did what he felt was right, and he challenged people around him, and that's what happened to him. And I see a little bit of myself in that, because I'm not doing the podcast anymore. We're selling off everything. We're going away, and we got tons of people telling us we're idiots, and because of what we believe is right for us. You know what I mean? And so anyways,
absolutely, man.
Harrison said a prayer, and he's sitting there in the tractor, in the trailer, and he's just closing his eyes just like this, really tight. And he says, and he said, "Thank you, Jesus, for being a good man."
Aww.
And it's made me think a lot. How can I be a better man? And what's missing in the fabric of the family unit? And what matters? And how people treat each other. Really, it's disgusting. And I have a serious problem with it. I really do. That's why I'm not going to be on social media anymore, because I'm tired of looking at it. I want to put up barriers in my life that are healthy and introduce the things like the food we eat, the things we discuss, the work we do, so that and eliminating guilt out of our lives, so that I feel like a good person, like I'm doing what I say. I say something and I actually live it. And I've been also thinking too, it probably wouldn't hurt to pray and to say grace at the dinner table, and have I have friends that can talk to us about that, and talk to Harrison about that in the way that it means to them, not in a religious way. Talk to the boy about what that means to you. What does Jesus mean to you? Your own personal relationship there. Maybe that's good. I have a feeling it probably is. And
that's right.
You know what I'm saying? So I wanted to share that, because I think, again, with everything going on in the world, and just how dark and twisted up it is right now, this is, again, one of those times that maybe I'm thinking about this more because of that. And maybe it's something I ought to look at, because it's tapped me on the shoulder more than once.
That's right, man. Yeah. Well, I'm really that's a really moving story, and I'm really proud of you for talking about that on here, and I'm really glad that you did, because it speaks to me, and I know it'll speak to so many of the people listening to this. I just really appreciate you as a friend. I appreciate your time coming on here and being a part of this conversation. At Holy Ghost Notes, our goal is to question the status quo, and our goal is to defend those who don't really have a way of defending themselves, and give a voice to those who don't feel like they have a voice. And I'm proud to have guests like you on who bring a perspective that is unique and important. Actually, it really matters to us to hear people like you who are raising their kids in the way that they think it is best for them. And it's helpful to our podcast. It's helpful to Tim and I on a personal level, and it's freaking awesome. And we get to do this. I love that we get to have, conversations like this. There are a lot of drawbacks to having a podcast, but one of the pros is certainly like we get to sit down and have cool conversations like this that matter.
That's right.
So thank you for being a part of that, man.
Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. And I was really excited to talk about that because it hit me over the head the other day. And it's been sitting on my heart, and it's something that I'm coming to realize, a few things about myself and about maybe what the best way to live is, so that, again, you don't have to have the burden of guilt. I mean, with the stuff where, like, if you could see yourself in a third-person security camera and all the things you do from the time you wake till the time you go to bed, would there ever be anything on that camera, on that video feed, that would make you feel uncomfortable or shameful or guilty, not proud, and eliminate those things from the things you do day to day and be ultra conscientious of those things? And then, I feel anyways, then you can start feeling a lot better about being assertive in your own methods, in your own ways, because of that. I think that really helps.
That feels like I have a lot of work to do. If there's that CCTV on me all day, oh my gosh! I don't want you guys seeing that. I'll tell you that much.
Well, I don't think a lot of us want to.
I think we can all share that, and if we don't feel the same way, then we've got some work to do.
Yeah, right. Well, that's the thing.
And we're a little bit of.
I think that's it's a good baseline, anyways, right? It's a good baseline to sort of calibrate, in a sense. And I don't know. Just want to throw that out there too before we sign off here. But hey, I want to thank you both for taking time to talk to me during this really interesting point in my life. It's definitely a very unusual time, and I don't know if I've ever had so many things being lifted from the roots all at once before. But I'm not a stranger to discomfort. I'm not a stranger to challenge, and I think that at the end of the day, like, if you can get through that with some dignity intact, and you feel good about the choices you make, it better prepares you for the next stage of your life. And I feel like the next stage of our lives is going to be even harder. But we feel anyways that this is how we want to live. And
that's awesome.
Right.
Love that.
So that's what's
that's very well put. And let's end on that note. Thank you so much for coming on here once again. Thank you, Tim. I know I was in your top 20,
so much fun.
But I'm just going to go ahead and say I'm just going to shrink this down to like top 5 for sure. So
too kind.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for coming on. This was really our pleasure. So
it was.
Thank you for gracing us with your presence and coming on and talking.
My
to us
pleasure,
today.
guys.
Wow. Well, thanks so much again, Seamus. That was just awesome. So as you were, that last story that you told actually made me think of something. So my son is right about the age of your son. So Caden is 4, and he's been asking a lot of the same questions. So it was cool hearing that we share that. But more recently, my son has been adamant about praying before a meal, and if we forget to pray before the meal, we pray before dessert, of course. But his praying
That's awesome.
is it is so funny. Like my in-laws have a very specific prayer that they pray before meals. The way I grew up, was that everyone would take turns praying, and it was however they wanted to pray for that meal. And that's usually how I pray before a meal or something. But my son prays a specific prayer every time, and it's Jesus, so we love you and you love us, and God, so we love you and you love us. He doesn't pray for the food. He doesn't pray for anything else. And for like the first few times, I was like asking him, like, why do you pray that way? Like, you should pray for the food and stuff. And then I like took a step back and I was like, wait a second, this is exactly the prayer that you should be praying. Like, as far as you getting it, this is it.
Yeah.
Jesus, you love us and we love you.
We love
God, you love us and we love you. I was like, man, that's like such a great prayer. So it's like I actually I've come to really love when my son will pray before meals, because that's exactly what I'm going to hear, and I love hearing it every single time.
Yeah,
so there's something
really cool.
there's something so refreshing about the innocence of a child, and that's exactly what I heard from Seamus's story towards the end of that conversation. So thanks again, Seamus. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. That was amazing. And thank you for listening to this podcast, Holy Ghost Notes. We're really happy to be doing this and feel very fortunate to have you as a listener and to have the Inner Circle as our support system to continue doing this. If you're interested in supporting or just getting more involved, or you're looking for community, our Inner Circle is a good place to be. It's a good place to start. In fact, it's so closely knit that they meet on Wednesday nights. This was outside of our control. They're just like, we like each other. Let's get together and talk some more. So if you'd like to sign up for that, you can sign up on our Patreon. And that'd be great. It would be awesome to have you.
It would. And on that note, I actually have a shout out for a new member. So big shout out to Jonathan Rush. Thank you so much for your support, and welcome to the Inner Circle.
Absolutely.
So if you guys are
Thanks,
interested
Jonathan.
at all, it does support the podcast. It helps us grow, helps us to continue to improve the quality and consistency. If you're interested, patreon.com/holyghostnotes. It's pretty cool. And you actually have a little community that you're building underneath MGL, Matt Greiner Lessons, which is really cool to see. I hear rave reviews about the drummer hangouts, which also happens on Wednesdays, right before our Wednesday night hangout in the Inner Circle. So it's pretty cool. And you can get access actually to Matt Greiner Lessons as well at a certain tier level. I think it's the triplet tier, maybe. I forget, but check it out. Thank you guys so much for listening to our podcast. Whether you're supporting us through Patreon or not, we really appreciate you listening, and we feel like you're a part of what we're doing. So thank you for that. And if you have any thoughts or questions or want to reach out, feel free. Matt and Tim at theholyghostnotes.com is our email address, and you can also hit us up on any of our socials. And if you're a drummer posting drum videos, make sure you use the hashtag #HolyGhostNotes for a chance to be featured on our page. Yeah.
That's right.
I think that's about it.
Very good.
That's
Thank
all
you,
she
everyone.
wrote.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt.
Peace.